Hi, this is Anthony Marchese, Chairman of Texas Rare Earth Resources. Symbol TRER, Tom Robert, Eddie Robert. Let's go to our forward-looking statement on page 2. By now, everyone has seen this many times, but for legal reasons, we need to once again refer to it. Following slide, cautionary note to investors. Most people are not aware that 43101 standards in Canada are not directly comparable with standards in the United States, and this cautionary note tells you that. On page 4, Texas Rare Earth Resources, in essence, is a mining company in the process of developing what will ultimately be one of the world's largest heavy rare earth deposits. The principal mountain is on 950 acres located in Hudspeth County, Texas, or about 80 miles southeast of El Paso, for those of you who are aware of that part of the country, right off Interstate 10. So as you can imagine, the infrastructure there is fantastic. There are other mountains in the area. There are 3 other mountains. We're only going to talk about one. As it stands, we have a 140-year mine life on one, so you can see there's plenty of other rhyolite or mass to explore down the road. And as I'll refer to later on, a third-party PEA, or preliminary economic assessment, from June 2012 found that we had about 1 billion pounds of rare earth elements. Following page, management team. Dan Gorski, who obviously is not here with us, is the CEO and a director of the company. Dan's been involved in the company since 2007, and he is the nucleus of the team. There are other people involved in the company, obviously. My name is a director, and as the chairman of the company, I've been involved since 2009. I am more of a capital markets background. Dan, on the other hand, is the mining guy, the guy who actually digs a shovel and as well as gets his hands dirty in the lab. Some financial highlights. Our fiscal year ends August 31st. Our stock price is a little bit lower today, 30 cents, in line with all the other resource companies. We don't have many shares outstanding, 37 million, giving us a market cap of about 12 or 13 million, which is incredible considering that our net present value of our deposit as measured last year was well over $1 billion. As it says there, as of February 2013, we have about 4.7 million in cash. We have enough to last us through August of next year, so there's no hurry to do anything or to do anything rash. Insider ownership says 36%, but realistically it's well over 50% when you consider friends and family. Institution, 17%. We have 2 major institutional shareholders that took part in a private placement several years ago at $2.50 a share. So you're able to buy at a significantly lower price, and about half the stock is available to be traded. This is probably one of the better slides and the most important slides that you'll see, the investment opportunity. I'd like to compare briefly Texas Rare Earth Resources against virtually any other rare earth deposit in the world. We're 72% heavies. All the others are significantly lower. And again, this is not all-encompassing, but some of the major comparables. We have, in the resource category, actually measured, indicated, and inferred. Many of the others have simply indicated and inferred, which is not as great a measure. It indicates that we've done a lot more drilling, and more importantly, we have a very uniform deposit that's at the surface. So we're not talking about underground mining. We're talking about a fairly straightforward project. And as you can see, relative to our market cap, we have a heck of a lot of heavy rare earth resource. Following page is page 8, valuable assets. This is not meant to be a chemical class or class in chemistry, but the biggest are dysprosium, yttrium, ytterbium, and they go on. We have some uranium, we have some thorium, which actually makes the deposit more commercial because we would be more attractive to, for example, a uranium producer, and we would be producing uranium, which is a traditional exchange-traded commodity. Heavy rare earths, we'll talk about later, very big in lasers, military, industrial, lithium-ion batteries, magnets. You probably read about the military and their laser-guided weapons for the Navy. Well, guess what? They need a lot of yttrium to develop those assets, and we probably will be one of the world's largest yttrium suppliers as well. Uranium and thorium, I mentioned that there are reactors being built in India which are based on thorium, which is far more efficient and less dangerous than uranium. In our lifetime, we'll never see that in this country, but it's there. In addition to which, we have below the contact point of the mountain, we have the world's largest and highest grade beryllium deposit. In that aspect, we compete, or we could compete with a company called Materion in this country. Materion is to the United States and beryllium what China is to the rare earths. They can virtually control the world's production of beryllium and beryllium alloy. The next slide, page 9, is the return on investment. The key takeaways here is that if you multiply the amount of margin that we could get per ton using very conservative assumptions about the price, the current price of rare earth minerals, assuming the project comes into play, we would be looking at well over $100 to $125 million of cash flow year one. And that goes on for another 140 years. The mineralogy is in something called yttrofluorite. These rare earth minerals don't come out naturally. They're located in other minerals. Yttrofluorite permits sulfuric acid to be used to process these chemicals. And the key takeaway there is that it's very low cost. We have lots of minerals that China wants, and we know that because they've come knocking on our door in the recent past. We could potentially be leaching or deriving lithium and beryllium from our deposit above the surface. That's a possibility as well. And we're in a very economically depressed part of West Texas, although, as I said, we're right off of Interstate 10, plenty of power, plenty of water, plenty of labor supply. We're not in remote parts of the world, and that's very important. It's like real estate, location, location, location. Next slide. Again, we refer to our on-top resources. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of what they call measured and indicated resources. Lots of other people have what they call inferred. Our resource is far more certain. There's no exploration risk in our deposit. Our deposit really becomes our ability, or rather the success of our deposit will be on our ability to successfully process what we have in the ground, or the metallurgy. We talked earlier about the fact that we have a very large beryllium deposit, and as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of uranium and thorium, and as you can see from the slide, probably in excess of 100 million pounds of uranium and 400 million pounds of thorium. The uranium, I think, will be commercialized. Thorium, as I said earlier, I don't see that in our lifetime being of real value. Famous last words. Exploration opportunities. We spoke earlier about measured and indicated and inferred. We have 3 other mountains there: Little Round Top, Little Blanca, Sierra Blanca. Some are higher grade, some are lower grade than what we have. We have no intention of mining those. Perhaps our joint venture partner, potential joint venture partner down the road would have an interest in doing that, but certainly we're not in that capital position at this point. We have a beryllium mine, as I mentioned, below the ground that also shows very high concentration of uranium. We have a beryllium resource which has a feasibility study completed by Cabot Corp in 1986. Cabot Corp chose not to proceed because they, in fact, went through some corporate changes They had a potential Japanese partner that they were negotiating with. As a result of the changes and changes in the Japanese partners' interests, they abandoned the project. But we still have a mine that could go into production within a year if we really wanted to. More than likely, we will be approaching the metallurgy using what they call leaching. Leaching is a decades-old metallurgical process. It's what the Chinese use to process their rare earths. The key takeaway from this slide is that we have a very simple metallurgical process. We will be announcing more detail as time goes on over the next several months. We have a very simple metallurgical process that will be fairly inexpensive, and in today's environment, we think that's going to be the key for Texas Rare Earth to be a winner in this space. Slide 13, just more of the same, talking about our economic objectives and the fact that it's a very profitable mine given the current prices of rare earth, and especially the heavy rare earth elements, and our capital expenses that we believe we will achieve going forward. We think that we'll be in the $250 to $375 million capex range. Last year, our preliminary economic assessment assumed about a $2 billion process. So if you're very profitable at $2 billion, you can imagine how profitable you'd be at $250 to $375. And more realistically, we think that any potential acquirer or joint venture partner would find this type of capex far easier to swallow and far easier to justify in today's economic environment, which frankly, for resource companies is not that great. We think we're the exception, or one of the exceptions, given our deposit. Our largest by dollar value element is going to be dysprosium. It's a heavy rare earth element. The key takeaway here on dysprosium on page 14 is that it's used for magnets, primarily magnets of all different types, wind turbines. It allows you, for example, to buy a drill at Sears today, which is probably a third to a half the size that it was 5 years ago, and probably 2 to 3 times as powerful. It's things like dysprosium that gets incorporated into the magnets that allows these magnets to be smaller and more powerful. Yttrium is our largest deposit by weight, or rather largest element by weight, but yttrium is more plentiful in the world, not as plentiful as people need, but more plentiful than dysprosium, therefore it trades at a lower price. Key takeaways on lithium is that it's used in lasers, light-emitting diodes, the new OLED TVs, and as I mentioned earlier, if the Navy wants to develop a laser-guided weapon from ships, they're going to need a heck of a lot of yttrium to do so. Uranium, no need to go into. We have a lot of it. Once the stockpiles from Russia are depleted, I think the nuclear industry is going to welcome uranium that we have in this country, and certainly in our deposit. Ytterbium, we have a lot of it. It's a very large element. It's half of all our 5 ultra rare earth heavies. It's a market that's developing. Erbium, slide 18, again, it's a rare earth element in demand. It's used in all kinds of nuclear control rods, vanadium alloys, lasers. As you can tell, a lot of these rare earths are used in various laser applications. So different lasers, you do different types of heavy rare earths. Thorium, don't want to get into it again, slide 19, tremendous BTU value, very safe, but the reality is that more than likely not in the United States. The uranium industry is vested, rather the nuclear industry is vested in the use of uranium, so the likelihood of using thorium is not that great. We want to maximize shareholder value. I think the key takeaway on slide 20 is that clearly we're not going to build this on our own. We will look at anything that maximizes share price. We will look at strategic partners. We'll look at selling the company. We will look at anything that maximizes value. And I can't say that enough. We have a great project. We've engaged an Asian financial advisor because we had Asian companies interested in what we're doing. And clearly that should be a sign to people that we're on the right track, because Asia is the largest user of heavy rare earths or rare earths in the world. So the fact that they're sniffing around tells you we're on the right track. I mentioned earlier, directors' offices own a tremendous amount of stock. Management here doesn't pay itself very much. We're all in it for a higher share price. Slide 21, we're going to maintain a strong balance sheet. As I mentioned earlier, we have enough to last us through a year from August or August 2014. Clearly, we're going to start now looking for potential partners, potential joint venture candidates, potential merger partners. We obviously, along the way, would look to monetize what we have. So we have beryllium that could be monetized. We have a small silver mine that could be monetized. We could sell a royalty. We could do offtake agreements. There's lots of creative strategies that could be utilized. And depending on the partner, that will determine the strategy we take. And obviously that which creates the largest amount of shareholder value and share price is the direction that we would consider. Slide 22, reiterating, we had a PEA last year, $2 billion. That will come down to anywhere from $200 to $350 million over the next 60 days. Very high return on investment, tremendously attractive relative to anything out there, not just a rare earth. I would challenge anyone to come up with a more valuable stock in the resource sector. We have a strong balance sheet. We're evaluating strategic alternatives, lots of insider ownership. With the stock trading where it is, not interested in raising money. We don't need to at this point. We think we have lots of other opportunities to maximize shareholder value. And finally, slide 23, feel free to call us, contact us. Myself, Dan Gorski, phone numbers there. Look to our website, www.TRER.com. Thank you very much.